Hey there, we've got a fun little topic in this week's video because the market is doing horribly as I sit here and make this video. And gosh darn it, wouldn't it be nice if we had something we could do about that? Well, there is kind of, right? There is something we can do. We could hedge. We could use hedging, right? Hedging on paper sounds great because you're hedging your bets, right? One thing does well, another thing does poorly. They balance each other out. It is the best of both worlds, right? But the point of this video is to question that because I've done research now in trading systems. I've done tons of research on hedging. Didn't love it. So trying to get the best of both worlds in trading systems, I've never seen evidence yet to say that was a very smart thing to do. But in high income and high yield, that's why we're making this video, because that's more interesting. All right, if you don't know, let's talk about the hedging good and bad. The big hedging proponent, if you read your literature and your books, is Nassim Taleb. He wrote the Black Swan, very famous book. I don't know if he would, he's a very smart guy. I don't know if he would quantify it as hedging, but to me it kind of is, mostly is, pretty much is. His strategy is always betting on a black swan, always betting on catastrophe. I mean, seems smart, right? There's always going to be a catastrophe, and I do like strategies that are good forever, right? But again, he does multiple things, and it's fine. He can send me a message and tell me how stupid I am, right? If I get it wrong. But in his books and his fund, he bets on a catastrophe and loses and loses and loses and loses and loses. And then all of a sudden catastrophe happens and he wins. And maybe he makes it all back and maybe he doesn't. That's his strategy. Sound philosophy, because black swans happen, but it's based on losing like 80, 90, 95% of the time. And then one big win. I mean, yikes, right? That's exact opposite how I got down the high yield rabbit hole, right? I want to win all the time. I'm tired of losing. Well, his famous hedging strategy is always losing. But he's playing for the Black Swan, and that's good. But I just bring that up to discuss the topic. But hedging does more than that. It does guard against the downside, but it also guarantees you can never truly win. What does that mean? Well, if you're always betting on bad and losing, and you balance that with something that wins, that winning is always losing. You always have to add those together. So you can never truly win, right? If you're betting for Tesla to go up and Tesla to go down, you can't win straight out. You can't make the full amount of money, I guess, that definition of win. So hedging does get very, very enticing when things get bad, like today. Not great when things get good, okay? However, that's the general feeling of hedging. The high yield world is totally different. So this all might be okay, right? That's what we're talking about. So how can we hedge? Lots of ways, especially with options. Options are a wonderful thing to use if you want to hedge. So many complicated and uncomplicated strategies, but we're only going to talk about two. One is you could just buy puts on an index. Just buy a put. Buy it at the market, buy a leaps contract, buy it a year out, whatever you want to do. Video isn't about that. It isn't about hedging strategies, but you could just buy a put any place you want for any expiration you want. And what does that mean? That means if the market goes down, you win, and you win big. Great, right? Well, the problem with that is, what if it goes up? Well, if you buy a put, you spend money, you buy it, right? So if it doesn't go down, you're just out that money. Lose, right? Similar to the Black Swan strategy. But if it does go down, you're going to win big. So that's one way to hedge, right? But you're guaranteed to lose those puts if the market is doing fine. Another way to do this, I think maybe an easier way, well, you can decide, is buy an inverse fund. Obviously, an inverse fund, you probably know what that is, but if you don't, it's a fund that goes up when the market goes down. So you look at a stock chart of an inverse fund, during the Great Depression or during 2008. No inverse funds in the Great Depression, but you know what I mean. But if you look at it during a bear market, 2022, for example, an inverse fund would be doing great. Yay. So you have one chart going up while the regular stock market is going down. Seems like a decent idea, I think. It's protection and inverse, both puts and inverse funds, but they're both protection when things get bad. But as I've been mentioning, these also do terribly when things get good. And the problem with that is, the problem with hedging overall is that things are good most of the time. If you're always betting against it being good and it's good all the time, see where we're going, that's a lot of losing. But let's examine. Okay, here is an inverse fund that pays money. It's a high income, high yield inverse fund, YQQQ. Here is the chart. And what has the it's not really the NASDAQ. We call it the NASDAQ. It's got a lot, QQQ's got a lot of stuff in it, but let's just call it NASDAQ. Or I mean, we'll call it tech or whatever. It's kind of a proxy for tech. It is the NASDAQ, but it's a proxy for tech. So what has QQQ been doing lately? Well, down. Or I mean up, right? But YQQ, on the other hand, is going down. If I confused you, here's the chart to make it easier, right? QQQ going up. YQQQ going down, which is exactly what we'd expect. So it's pretty much doing its job. While the Qs are going up, YQQ will go down. But you can see when things get bad, you get little blips, right? These jump up when the QQQ tanks. Okay? All right, this goes down, and right at the end, right, we see that go up. I don't know if those dates were exactly correlated, but you get the picture. But now, we learned this in our last video. TradingView has a fun little function. Just go down to the right-hand corner of your TradingView chart, and it adds in all the dividends or distributions. So you get the true idea of what something's doing. You can't just look at a stock chart and get the real story, right? You have to look at the distributions added in. And so if you hit that magic button, this is the YQQQ adjusted. And, it goes sideways. It doesn't look that bad, right? It pays a pretty nice dividend, which seems to offset a lot of that movement. So, again, it's officially a distribution, but I use those terms interchangeably. Okay. Well, all right, we got maybe we got our inverse fund. That is our hedge. Now, we obviously need something that goes up, that follows the market when things are bullish. And of course, this is high income, so we need something that pays a nice dividend. We're not talking about 2% J&J. I think that's actually pretty good for J&J. But anyway, I'll choose YMAG, which is the Yield Max Magnificent 7. Some people hate Yield Max. We talked about that in the previous video. But this is just taking the Magnificent 7 stocks and creating some income on them, okay? Why Magnificent 7? So if the Mag 7 are doing well, then this will do well. And let's take a look. Now, this pays a pretty hefty dividend / distribution. And you can see it fell here, but they've gone to weekly, right? Big change in how this one is traded, how they use their options. They went from monthly to weekly. And you can see as it's gone to weekly, it's been very steady in a steady channel. Going up for a while, we had obviously a downturn recently, but now it's climbing its way back up. So again, this is just the regular chart. This isn't the adjusted chart, but it generally speaking, after a fall here in August 2024, it's been rising pretty much, right? Okay. Maybe not the best, but it's what we're going to go with. If we adjust it, of course, wow, that's exactly what we want to see, right? So again, always look at the full picture. This is exactly what we want to see if we add all the distributions back in. I mean, this is a nice left to right 45-degree angle. Okay, so do we have something? Do we have two things that might work together? Are we hedged? Okay. If we put those two together, right, we're going to find out. We're going to find out if we're truly hedged. But before we do that, what are the goals? What's the point? You can't just buy stuff. You can't get on a tennis court and not know what your goals are. You can't get on an investing court and not know what your goals are. So what are the goals? If we put these two together, We're not trying to make $1 million. We're trying to stay even. We're not trying to make money. We're not trying to lose money, right? Of course, no one's trying to lose money, but you get the point. The whole goal of something like this simple little portfolio, is to stay even and then collect the huge distributions, reinvest those, and make more and more and more and more income. What we're afraid of is what's happening today. What we're afraid of is a bear market, and we want our inverse fund to take care of us. So even if it gets bad, we want to try to stay even. That's the goal. But hedges don't always do that, right? No, so let's take a look. Now, the data only goes back to September 1st, 2024, and this is through January 24th, 2025. These are those two ETFs, the inverse and the YMAG put together, and this is the Vanguard 500, okay? $10,000 turns into $10,275. It actually didn't stay flat. It made 2.75%. Wow, that's a little bonus, right? Now, this is reinvesting the dividends, of course, but the market did better. We expected that, though. What are the goals? Remember, we're not trying to match the market. We're not trying to beat them. We're trying to stay flat and then just get paid. That's the point of doing something like this. So did we get paid from September 1st to January 24th? Over $1,000. That's 4 months-ish, right? 4 months, over $1,000. 4 months times by 3. That's about $3,000, a little bit more than that. So let's call it $3,000 on $10,000. What is that? That's 30% yield, about a 30% yield. So we're making 30% on our money. We're getting paid an income of 30%. We've gotten paid a little bit, right, in 2025 because these pay out, or at least YMAG pays out every week, as you saw. Okay? Not bad, right? If we're nervous about the stock market cratering like it is as I make this, right, then hedges become interesting, and a hedge like YQQQ should win, even while YMAG is losing. And if it works together that way, we can keep our principal steady, not growing, and even going down a little bit would be fine. We just keep our principal steady in potentially all markets, right? It's a worry-free portfolio. That's the goal. And yet we can still take in that high income. So I don't know if it's the best of both worlds, but if we want to keep it flat and still make income, at least so far, it's not bad, right? I'll be tracking this portfolio and many, many, many others. I've formed a little group called the Dividend Investment or Income Program, DIP. If you're interested in that, you can always see the details in the description. But love talking about this stuff, so we're going to talk about it a lot more. That's the video for this week. Bye for now.